Welcome to Climate at Your Service, a Climate Europe 2 podcast where we delve into the world of climate services. I'm your host, Dr. Stacey New, a climate scientist from the Met Office in the UK, and I'm thrilled to guide you through this exploration of how climate information can empower decision making and action across different sectors and communities around the world. As we explored in the first episode of this series, Climate Europe 2 works on advancing the standardisation of climate services to ensure they are reliable, comparable and accessible for decision makers and communities. In today's episode, we're diving into why climate information is so important for our cities and urban environments. Imagine being able to plan and build our cities with a clear understanding of climate patterns and potential impacts. This knowledge can help urban planners design infrastructure that's not only resilient but also enhances the quality of life for all residents. It's about creating sustainable and livable cities for the future. Anyway, we'll hear all about that today from our guest. Today we're joined by Mar Santamaria, co-founder of Trecentós Mil, an urban think tank based in Barcelona, which explores the potential of big data and new computing paradigms to explore urban analysis, strategic planning, and decision making. Hello, Mar. Welcome to the podcast, and a big thank you for joining me today. I wonder if we could kick off the podcast by having you introduce yourself and saying a little bit about what you do and the kinds of things your company gets up to.
Good morning, Stacey. The pleasure it's mine to be here today. I'm Mar Santamaria, and I think as Asun did in the last episode, I here have a double hat. On the one side, I'm the co-founder of Trecentós Mil, so we are a urban planning office that has been using data during the last 10 years to make advocacy and change the way we do urban policies. And on the other side, I'm here as a part of a consortium of the Impetus for Change project, which is an Horizon 2020 project, where we try to bridge the gap between science and public policy regarding climate data. It's a consortium of more of 20 institutions, scientific institutions, and also other partners that will help society to better access climate data.
Great, thanks for that introduction. It's really clear to see that you're kind of at that cutting edge of both science and policy and how we can incorporate that in the urban sector. Before we kind of delve more deeply into the details of your projects, which sound fascinating, and everyone should check out the amazing website you have. I'd just like to talk a little bit about the broader picture of climate services and urban and the urban sector. So obviously, as we know, climate services are all about making sure that the climate data is usable for decision makers and policy makers, and that often can hinge around kind of how data is standardized, making sure it's reliable and that it's comparable. And this is really important for cities where climate impacts can vary even across very close neighbourhoods. So like zooming out a bit, what are some of the key challenges that cities are currently facing, and how do you see climate services playing in a role helping them to adapt?
I think it might sound unbelievable, but I think that now, for the first time, we are really aware that climate has become the transversal driver of a lot of public policies, and it's beyond adaptation and mitigation plans that I think this conversation it's going on. We are in a moment where we need to make really radical transformation in cities, in territories. I will use the word cities, but I will refer to a broad universe of organization of human settlements. We need, for example, to change the mobility and doing this transition of not promoting the use of private transport, that it's quite can be quite controversial. We need also to address huge processes of urban regeneration because the buildings where we are inhabiting are not yet up to date in terms of climate. We need to redesign our public space. If you have been here in Barcelona in summer, it's really hard, and we need the public space still to be the place when we can meet, we can interact, we can build our social bonding. Or, for example, no, just to give a last example, we need to rethink our housing policies, because climate is going to create a lot of imbalances of internal migration and different types of housing where people it's living it, and different housing conditions. So this represent a lot of challenges, but maybe the challenge itself is that we need to do all these changes in a really short time, in a really right way, because it's now or never, and we don't have too much experience to deal still from the urban planning side with all these processes. That's why being in touch with scientists and be able to use climate information and climate services, as for example the one that we are trying to create in the I4C project, it's so important to make this transition, because this transition needs to be fair, needs to be really done in a short time, and we need to increase our capacity to make this phenomena that we see in cities really precise, really accurate, so we can take all this new generation of policies and being able to do it in a really territorially, I don't know really how to say this in English, with a really accurate territorial scale. So it's really important now to be able to quantify these new climate scenarios, because these actions that we need to somehow do need to be scaled to this future that now that we are having the first results of the project was even more I would say encouraging that we thought. So I think that one of these most difficult challenges that we have is really to understand which is the most probable scenario that we are tending to, and being able to react. So I think that on one side we are in a moment where we have all the science that we can touch, that we can use, but maybe we don't have the experience and the knowledge to deal with. So what we are trying to actually also do in our practice, but also in Impetus for Change, is to collect the knowledge that some of cities that are maybe more advanced have, and being able to transpose these experiences in adaptation and also mitigation to other places. And for that, we need an infrastructure, climate services that will help us measure, compare, and put together all these necessities in the context and in the experience that can make us overpass this moment.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that's exactly kind of, it relates very much to Climate Europe too, kind of scalability, but also ensuring that whilst you are doing scaling things up, you're making sure that everything is equitable. You don't want to forget those communities that are underrepresented or don't have the access to, even being able to access data and the information. We need to ensure that everything we do is equitable whilst we're doing the important scaling up of these services, like you said. And you touched on the topic of bringing in lots of different expertise, and I think, as you said, you're part of a consortium, and Climate Europe too is a consortium, and bringing in like architects and social science and those physical scientists is the perfect way to kind of be able to get that information and to put it all together and hopefully provide useful and usable climate services, exactly like you're doing. I think that's a really great way that you've kind of worded that. So scalability, equitability, and the power of a consortium, and bringing in that network and bringing in stakeholders and users. So we make sure that things are equitable. So I think, yeah, you worded that absolutely brilliantly. Just on the topic of scalability and kind of bringing it back to standardization and Climate Europe too, we've kind of touched on that different neighborhoods will be impacted by extreme weather events differently. You might have one neighborhood on a hill and one neighborhood at the bottom of a hill. So obviously you're going to get different impacts. And obviously they'll use climate data in different ways. But I imagine there's some kind of inconsistency around how cities collect the data, and this you have to incorporate this into anything you do around policy and planning. And how does this impact urban planning, and what steps can we take to kind of incorporate standardization and the importance of standardization in that planning process?
I think that something that we are discovering through our work in 300,000, but also in the I4C project, actually that we have a gap. We have a gap actually between the this top science that is able to really quantify which these climate scenarios are gonna be, and the type of decisions that we are taking today. Um, so we identify as barriers to overcome the situation the lack of knowledge, for example, that public servants or urban planners or policymakers have in regarding to climate data, where they do find these up-to-date climate models, how they can use this data really in terms of putting this into their computers and be able to create a map showing where they can do an action. No? So is this combination of lack of technical knowledge, the knowledge that sometimes in the public realm it's isolated in specific department, no, and it should be transversal, and it's not because it's in silos. Also, this lack of easy access to data and the technologies, and for me, the most important point actually it's the lack of knowledge of which decisions could be or should be taken in a different way if we have all this data available. No? So um, what we have learned in this 2 years and a half of the project at Impetus for Change is that cities are used to take short-term decisions, and for that they are not using climate projections, that they are using meteorological data, and they, for example, want to know if in 2 days it's going to be a heat wave or an extreme climate event, and they need to react to that, but they are not used to the concepts of projections, predictions, just maybe few people inside the public administration, which is in the environment or climate department, but maybe a urban planner or a social worker are not used to these concepts, and even to this idea that we can think, if we have as the Impetus for Change project is proposing, more short-term climate projections, we can start think differently. For example, we can reconfigure the way we program the heating system of public services in the city, of or for example how we can change the children's activity or sport events if we know that in 3 months we can have this heat wave. So it's a completely different way of thinking, really to be able to relate the type of decision with the specific time frame of this projection. So in Impetus, actually we are working with seasonal and subseasonal scenarios, and what we are trying to do together with the stakeholders is to think which policies, and on the other side what we are trying to propose, it's to go from the 100 kilometer normally grid that the climate models have to really a scale that it's around 10 kilometers. So that for a city, it's providing this capacity of territorialize, to really making different types of policy to specific places in the territory. And for that also we need to make a reset of the type of decisions and the type of policies that could work in this way. So this preparation can also have implications on health, on mortality, in economy, and so many dimensions that we cover with the urban policies.
Going back to kind of the lack of knowledge and where to find the data, definitely comes up a lot in terms of climate services. Some stakeholders I speak to, you know, they might not be aware of climate services, and it's actually, our role is to kind of make them aware of climate services and what is out there for them to be able to use and to make decisions, and for us to signpost them to websites or data sets. And it's definitely something that crops up more and more when we talk to people, is where can they find that data. And I think, yeah, definitely, I think I said before, your website is really great for kind of showcasing different projects you're on and where to find information. So I think you're doing a really great job there. So I think that gives us a nice overview of climate services, standardization, a little bit about what you do in your role. But I would like to kind of delve a little bit deeper into your work, because it is fascinating. And it's always good to move from talking about kind of the theoretical things and moving into practice, and telling people about what's actually been done in that space to show them good case studies of what you've been doing. So
Yeah, but I think that here, and maybe it's a general approach, but I think that what also it's really important in this case when we are talking about data-driven policies or evidence-based policies, what it's really important actually it's to build trust between the different stakeholders that are promoting the policies. So I think that, for example, in the case of Impetus, having this consortium with more than 20 institutions that most of them are involved in the IPCC panel, give us this kind of label of trust subs, not data that you can trust, data which is really accurate. And I think that also this is the German of making more advanced decisions, to be able to build this trust in the data that we are using.
Yeah, trust is the big thing, and it comes up all the time within the climate services we're developing. And you're exactly right, and building that trust takes time. So these climate services can take a while to become successful or finished, but you're building that trust between stakeholders. And yeah, you're exactly right. Thank you for bringing up trust.
And also, I think you are a great communicator, Stacey. I think communication also it's really important, to have
Yes.
even a vocabulary that everyone in a table can understand, that from a climate
Yes.
scientist to a urban planner, And I think it's one of we were making a co-evaluation exercise the other day with the consortium, and actually I think it was one of the topics that for us it's more relevant, how we are able to engage in the same conversation and understand each other.
Yeah, even with within a consortium, scientists from different organizations have different words for things, and obviously uncertainty is a big one that comes up. And we talk about the skill of a forecast, but for a lot of people that means different things. So trust, communication are definitely two things that are very important. Thank you for that. I wanted to talk a little bit about AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, just because it's such a buzzword in climate services, but also all over the world.
All of us, yeah.
Even my mum and dad are talking about ChatGPT. I thought we could delve a little bit into this topic, and it's just everywhere. So we know kind of that AI and machine learning is changing the way that we not only think about data, but how we approach kind of new projects. And if you could talk about some specific ways that AI are helping cities to adapt, and maybe a little bit about what you're doing in your two projects.
I would prefer to talk not about AI, but
Sure.
about the high capacity of computation and data management.
Yeah, go for it.
Because not all the most impressive techniques are related to artificial intelligence and neural networks and so on. So for us, what is important is this high capacity that you said. No, it's like having
Yeah,
asteroids in our hands to do things.
sure.
And for example, in the case of Impetus, this high capacity of computations, because we have in the consortium some big computation facilities. For example, we see here, no, the Barcelona Supercomputing Center in Barcelona, and other facilities that we have associated to the consortium. This is helping us, no, to make a big effort in, as I explained before, in downscaling these climate models with data that can be used, no, below the 10 kilometers. So I cannot, I don't compromise my the team of scientists. Um, and that's really important, because once we have done, no, this step, no, we this then scaling, we can find these special relations between the climate data and other urban phenomena that we have, that at this smaller scale, no? For example, population density, inequality, where exactly do we need to make a transformation on housing, where we need to fix or adapt our space that it's going, no, our public space that it's going to suffer more on summer, or when we need to put a strategic facility, you know, for example, a climate shelter. No? So at this point, it's where really these techniques are really interesting, because we can really make this more fine cross-cutting explorations of the urban phenomena, which is really crucial to change, as I said, the way we are making the public policies today.
Perfect. Thank you. So when I was looking at your website, one particular project just stood out to me, which I thought was fascinating, which was Arturo, which is like a lot of the work I do is like engaging with people, and I think this is like an amazing project which brings in that kind of AI powered thinking, but also citizen science. So I just wondered if we could talk a little bit about Arturo, because I think it's fascinating.
Actually, it's Arturo, it's Mercé, and it's Party
Ah,
Map. It's a set of projects that are linked to the activity that we have in 300,000, developing together with cities these no, different types of policies and indicators, no, that can help them inform housing, mobility, economical activity. So we actually reach a point where we need somehow to go beyond the traditional explanation, not that traditional explanation that we were making of the city with numbers, no, because we were specializing in making, no, these data-driven analysis, these data-driven policies. So that means, no, that we have a high capacity to really quantify our environment. And that means, for example, that in the case of Barcelona, the model that it's behind the project Mercé, it's a kind of urban digital twin of our city, where for each of the street we have more of 200 variables related to urban fabric, to population, to so a lot of things that we are able now to describe the cities. But at certain point, as I said, no, we are in this process of really transforming deeply our urban environments. We need to make sure that these new cities that we are building are cities where people would like to live, and are environments that are desirable, livable. And this for us, no, at certain point was something as important as knowing the amount of square meters of the amount of grid that we have in cities. So we made this first project in Madrid that was called Arturo, together with Fundación Cotec. Then we make a second one in Barcelona, which is called Mercé, together with with the support of the Ministry of Science of Spain. And then there is a spin-off of this project that it's called Party Map in South Africa, together with Angela Pascal and the Vespo, and Belgium Space Agency and the Free University of Brussels. So mainly the idea here is to be able to quantify livability. No? So if I ask Stacy what a livable city is for you, it would be something completely different that for Mar and for no and for maybe at no a 15 year girl or no a senior no demographic profile. No? So that means that this is a concept that is really subjective, that it's based on the perception that we have of the city, and that somehow we need to find a strategy to be able to take these different perceptions and quantify them into a single one. So we designed a citizen science experiment that consisted in it was based on this theory of perception. And actually what we showed the inhabitants were different photographs of Madrid, Barcelona, and South Africa, and we asked them to choose between the environments that for them were more livable. No? So the question was, which of these streets would you prefer to live in? So it was a really simple and clear question. And people need to decide no, and rank no, the different photographs. It's someone even call it like the Tinder of urban planning because it was like really like a kind of game. But no, besides this game, we have a lot of science. So we have, no, as I said, this digital twin of a city that it's aggregating more of 150 variables regarding different no, factors of the urban fabric. So from this model, actually, what we take is a representation of streets. From these streets, we collect no, these photographs, and this is a training data set, no, like talking more on no and on AI no wording or machine learning wording. It's the data set no that we actually no show to the citizens, and they help us rank. So in this process of the voting, actually we have the same training data set but order, and from that it's when we start applying a really, in this case it's a really simple algorithm that help us make a prediction to really rank all this universe of data according to the perception and the voting of people. So at the very end, as a result of the project, we have this training data set, which is order. We have this algorithm, which has been trained with the perception of citizens. We have a map of livability of the, according to the different, we define actually different levels of livability of the streets. So you get a map of your city ranked according to these different levels of livability. And also we know which are the variables of our model which are more important in having a good rank, a good voting from the citizen perspective. So for example, in the case of Barcelona, it's having a certain amount of urban density, it's having a certain combination of um, antiquity of the buildings, is having a certain amount of green space, and that we can translate into a specific number. And the other thing that it's really interesting about this process, that actually the results were different in Madrid, in Barcelona, and in South Africa. It's something that we can scale up, and we can make participate a lot of different demographic profiles. And it's when we go for example, to the perception of men and women, to children, to all senior people, that we have more consensus in the areas and the ratings and the perceptions. So that means that we are able even to know something that, when we try to introduce, for example, gender into urban planning, it's something that it seems that it can only be addressed through focus groups or a specific participation with these kind of processes, we are able to really have these lenses of the city perceived by different demographic profiles. And we think this is really also really relevant, because we can make this perception something which is really objective.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's so important to bring in citizen science, like you said, and I think by bringing in the community to take part in the science, they take some ownership of it as well, and they feel like they're part of the decision making process. And I think in the long term that helps people adapt. And before we wrap up the podcast, I just wanted to leave the listeners with a glimpse of what might be on the horizon, what your kind of outlook on the future is. So looking ahead, if you had the power to change one thing about how cities approach climate resilience and being better prepared for the impacts of climate change, what would it be?
I would like to raise 2 points. I would like to see, I don't know if I'm able to change, or yeah, we are trying to make the change possible. But I would like to see more cross-cut collaboration with scientists, as we are trying to do in Impetus for Change, together with this capacity of involving citizenship. I think that this is one change that we need to experience. And the second point, it's also related to this idea, and I'm gonna take this to really to the urban planning and architecture world, and also very much related to this idea of livability and desirability of the urban environments that we are building. Now, which is the idea that we are building a new architectural language. No, so we don't have that much of experience in building new type of cities, new type of buildings that can address these adaptation issues, and that it's related to a new aesthetics, that also we need to make the citizens like. And I think here there's a huge, I wouldn't say change, it's a huge challenge that we have from the side of urban planning and architecture. And I think that the other change that we need to see in the next years is really how we make this green transition fair. And here I'm really convinced that all the work that from the science part, but also from this cross-cutting collaboration with other professionals, is what would make this green transition fair possible.
Thank you so much. So this has been such an insightful conversation. I've learned a lot about urban planning and the decision-making process, and I think you're right to end on citizen science and incorporating that cross-cutting expertise as well, and that's very much what we do in our projects in Climate Europe too. So thank you so much, Mar, for joining us today and offering that rich perspective on how cities can become more resilient through that thoughtful planning and bringing in powerful data. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of the Climate Europe 2 podcast. As always, don't hesitate to get involved, send us your questions and tell us the topics you would like to cover in future episodes. To get in touch, send us a message on social media, so it could be X or LinkedIn, or email us at info climateeurope2@bsc.es. And don't forget to check out the website, Tracy Entos Mill, and learn all about the fantastic work that Mar is doing and all the great work that we're doing in Climate Europe 2 on our website. So until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful discussions on climate services.